Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hank, we haven't seen you in forever.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a long time. I've been hiding. What can I say?
Grew a beard and everything.
Yeah.
I know. It's a great place to hide snacks.
In
That
between
just
healing.
seems so unhealthy. Seems a little problematic right there. Uh, Hank, you're joining us tonight to go over sound healing because you like to make a lot of noise.
I do. I'm so surprised you wanted me on because I know that what I do is one of your least favorite things.
When, when you and I were chatting earlier, and you're like, "You want me to play sounds?" And I'm like, "Sure."
Well, we totally don't have to, but that's why I stream from the office because all my noisemakers are within arm's reach. So I
I
can.
see them around you. I see them
Mhm.
around you. Just because I might not enjoy it, other people do. You have a whole office dedicated to it because people do. So, sound healing and vibrational healing. And Maria, you even asked a good question before we even went live. Like,
Yeah.
what's the difference between sound healing frequency and vibrational healing?
Yeah, and I like we were talking like about that before, and Maria and I both have some similar training with it. But I would say all healing is vibrational healing, and sound healing specifically is what we can experience within our range of perception. Like that is here in this middle world or whatnot. Though we work use a lot of energies from Reiki and Lomi Lomi and those types of things that are also a vibrational healing. It's all under that big umbrella. It's just a question of what can you tangibly experience in the realm of sound healing. You have a client book, and I think sometimes the healing starts before they show up. And the next thing I know, I'm getting like, I know that I'm already working on them. But what I have found is the case, like I had that come up a lot with people with addictions and things where I've had a similar past. And what it signaled to me is I have something still resonating with what's going on with them that I need to look at. So, like a lot of times when people say you don't want to take on your client's illness, I wonder, is it taking on the client's energy or is it your resistance to dealing and looking at your own stuff? That they come there and all of a sudden it's just like, "Rrr," and you're like, I don't want to look at it. So I'm going to get sick instead. I'm going to blame it on the client where all the time I just had to look in the mirror and, see a little bit of what's going on inside. Every client brings a little mirror of yourself that you get to
Yeah.
look at and work on if you're willing to.
And have you found out with the sound healing too that when you have clients come in and you do a sound healing on them, you find out that there is a little residue in you that you're doing this sound healing on this client.
Yeah, almost everybody I feel it, but I intentionally let it flow, let it go. That there's that whole saying from like Black Elk Speaks, be the hollow bone. And
Mhm.
when we are, it's great. And whenever you do have that resistance, it's just a question of like, I need to allow this to flow and let it go as well. But almost always there's some sort of resonance. Whatever is coming up for me, I know is happening with my client. It's like kind of like a parallel track.
Mhm.
And then that gives me more information as to where do I go with this client. What tuning fork set am I going to use for this client? What inspirations am I going to tell them? And kind of every session's a little bit like life coaching too, in a way. Like, what are you going to be able to say to them that they can leave with that might help them choose differently? Because we can't make anybody do anything, but what we say can maybe inspire them to think about something a little bit differently without giving them the whole picture. Because they have to come to their own awareness. Otherwise, it's like they didn't do the work themselves. So you can only do so much, kind of helping them to navigate to their own choice, their own space where they can make a different choice to go a different direction to kind of get out of their own environment that they created for themselves.
Now you brought up the tuning forks. The tuning forks, I don't know. I've always seen the tuning fork is a vibrational because you don't. I mean, it makes a little bit of sound, but it's not like how your crystal balls are or your
Mhm.
gong or any other noisemaker that Melissa want to listen to.
Well, I look at like crystal bowls and gongs as like kind of raw power and general frequencies. Then tuning forks is like the fine tuning calibration. Like a C is a C, and that's going to affect certain energy centers. But then when you're looking to at like organs and different things like that, then there's like more calibrated specific tones.
So it's a more of a subtle energy sound because it's like lower and and it's more in the vibration the body takes in more so than the sound.
Mm. What I really feel is that when you're using multiple noisemakers, if you have crystal balls on either side or multiple forks, the combination of tones in the body, it creates, like Dr. John Boyu actually talks about this. He's the author of Human Tuning, and I consider him like the modern day, like founder of modern day sound healing, because he started like putting science to the sound. And he shows in the pharmaceutical industry how they have sound vibrations that create a still point where they can levitate water, and then they subject it to harmonics, and then those
Mhm.
harmonics makes the water start to spin in all kinds of different sacred geometric shapes. So when you're having like the bowls, the gongs, the tuning forks, it's really about the overtones and the way that the tones are interacting, and it's creating like sacred geometry in the water molecules of your body. And so that's where I really feel like, whether it's tuning forks or any of the other things, it's creating the space where there can be shifts on like the cellular level, for the person to have an elevation of whatever's going on with them.
So why don't we get into some of the history on sound healing and how that got to be so popular now in today's time? Because I feel like there's been a huge uptick in people interested in sound
Oh,
healing
yeah.
and how it can and help them. Even in the store, when they realize like there's so many different tuning forks, there are bowls. Um, those that are
Mhm.
watching with us online can see like the gong behind you. So, how did sound healing really get started?
Well, it's been around like since forever, and I'll just give one reference point. I know that there was either Atlantean, I think it was Atlantean, or it might be Lemurian, but Jill Matson in her research was showing how they would use like sacred geometry with like copper on the ground and like stand at different points and do toning into a person to like help with like wound regeneration and different things. Even regrowing limbs is like some of like the super old type of stuff. And there's like theories that they built the pyramids using like kind of like that acoustic levitation that I referenced that the pharmaceutical industry uses, that they did toning to be able to levitate things. So like sound has been around for a long time, but the modern day thing all came from Dr. John Boyu, who was a clinical psychologist, and he wrote the book Human Tuning. And he just had this inspiration one day from spirit, and he thought, I wonder if you could tune the human body the same way you could tune an instrument. And he arranged to be able to use an anechoic chamber at a university. And he went and bought a tuning fork, and he is speeding on his way back because he's so excited. So he's like speeding to the university to try out this tuning fork, and he gets pulled over by a state trooper. And this trooper's like asking him, he's like, "Where are you going so fast?" And he's all excited. He's like, "Well, I think you can tune the human body, and I think you can do a tone, and it's going to balance this." And the trooper's just like, "Well, come with me. I want to show you something." And he shows him that little tuning fork that they use to calibrate the radar gun. And the trooper told him, I whenever I calibrate the radar gun, I can, after hearing that tone, I can look at a car and I just know how fast they're going, and then I can validate it by tagging them with the radar gun, and then I can confirm that I was able to actually tell how fast they were going. And Dr. John Boyu thought, this is great. This is validation that yes, you can tune the human body. Now he did get the speeding ticket because he's everybody in class asked like, "Did you get the ticket?" And he did get the ticket, but the officer gave him the manufacturer of the tuning forks. And so like when he went to the anechoic chamber, and he when you're in the chamber, there's two sounds that you can hear, one of which is the sound of the nervous system, like it's like a high pitch, and the other one is like a sound where you can hear the blood coursing through your veins. And if you monitor and you can measure that, the frequency of the nervous system, and then you activate a tuning fork, and then you measure the nervous system again, he was able to show that the influence of the tuning fork was able to shift the frequency of the nervous system. And then he started going into all kinds of research, and based his tuning fork set, the cellular harmonic set, off of the Schumann resonance, which is our connection to the earth. And he made his whole tuning fork set and a whole set of protocols to balance the nervous system, to do dream recall, all kinds of different things. And then technology caught up to things, and now everybody's making tuning forks. And there's more science showing like it helps with your cells and the absorption level. Like from gong experiences, they did blood draws before and after, and they can show that the cells are behaving better and their absorption rates increased. So science started showing, hey, there's something to this. And it's just so readily available. Like everybody and their brother is doing sound baths now. Like when I
Mhm.
started, like I was like one of the only people doing sound baths, and now I'm looking like everybody I know has bowls and is doing a sound bath. So it's just it's so like intertwined in our culture now that people are having these experiences and they literally float out of a sound bath. They're like, oh, whoa, what was that? And they become interested. And now everybody's kind of like, well, I could go buy some forks or a bowl and I could have that at home. And when I need a hit, I can play my little bowl and I can feel better and get rid of some heaviness. So it's just accessible and it works. And science is showing that there's validity to it, even though some people say no, but still, like the blood draws are the blood draws, and there's a little bit of science behind the sound, which is why I love calling it like this bridging modality, where if you have a show or someone coming into the store and they're like this and they don't know about the bowls, you could give them a scientific explanation or a metaphysical explanation, so like you really can speak to both sides of that, both sides of people's belief systems depending where they're at and what they're willing to receive.
Now you mentioned toning. Is toning using the instruments or is that vocal?
Toning's vocal, and we have great examples of that from our tradition with Zane, where when we chant like Pachamama,
Mhm.
Pachamama, it's actually toning for the energy centers of the Nawis in our tradition. But there's also ones for the chakras where they have like Ram, and I always forget them, but like for each chakra set, for each
Mhm.
chakra, there is a note and a vowel sound that goes with it that you could just tone. Like Om is a great example. Om, if you're out of sorts, you tone it. Or you just ask, what vibration do I need right now? And you make it. There's a great technique. I think it started with Sherry Edwards, who worked a lot with Jill Matson. She's like somebody who the CDC even consults to like classify diseases because she can hear the frequency of diseases. She did a whole bunch of work during COVID for like frequencies that would help mitigate the virus and all kinds of things like that. But she would do you give like whatever you're working on, whether it's like a heaviness because of resentment or say you have a headache, you give it an audible tone. So you want to make it sound ugly, like whatever you're working with. This like wah, right? And then you keep holding that, and then you double it in notes. So double it again, double it again, and you keep going until you can't go anymore with your voice, and you just go in your imagination. And then you just feel how it feels, and you've literally taken this low vibrational for a headache or stomach issue or whatever it is, and you've elevated it. And when you've done that, then like if you practice it when you don't need it, so when people aren't going to think you're crazy doing that down the street, but you practice that, and whenever you get blindsided and you feel something heavy, you could do that, and you're literally assigning it a tone and elevating it. And I've had clients where they use that and they had a headache and then they don't, or they've had an issue and then it isn't an issue anymore. So a lot of it's the intention, but there's something to be said too about naming the tone that you're actually working with and then intentionally elevating it.
So the intention is also important when you're doing the tones of what it
Yeah.
is that you're trying to create or a healing that you're trying to create.
Intention is important to the point where you don't want to box in the healing by over intending.
Okay.
Like you want to have the space of I don't have any expectations yet I know anything is possible. And then when you do have your intentions, maybe instead of having the intention like I intend for my client to be healed from cancer, well, maybe instead I intend the best for my client and I have a preference for us to work on the cancer, but it's not like an intention, because sometimes when people intend, they're like squeezing the sponge. They want something so bad, they're intending it so bad, they're squeezing so hard that that sponge can't receive anything. And so like intention is like more like an asking energy go here, energy go there, like a bow and arrow, and then you let go of the result, because if
Hmm.
you're expecting the result with the intention, then the intention is actually more of a handcuff to the universe than a direction.
Yeah, it won't work, and that's how I was trained to have the intention to do the best for the client, but don't attach yourself to the results.
Right. And then also just making sure your client is actually, well, I mean, if their client's showing up, they're willing.
Hmm.
How much is the client actually willing to receive? I think that's one place as healers, like you're holding the space that maybe they can step into a place where they're able to receive more than what they initially would have been able to receive if they hadn't come see you. Like the
Yes.
space that we hold where that's like you're not judging them. There's no
Hmm.
like no walls for like a judgment that would like create a barrier, and maybe they can receive a little bit more, but then like not having an expectation. And that also means that when the people get healed, that you don't take credit for it. I was just a witness.
Yeah, I do that too. I was just a conduit. That's it.
Mhm.
I'm just
Mhm.
here holding the space for you.
Yeah, that's really big in Hawaiian hand healing. Lomi Lomi.
Yeah.
There's the guy Harry. I took some classes from him, and
Hmm.
he would say that it's in the point where you're breathing in and breathing out, that still point between the breaths where the miracle happens, and you were just a witness to it.
Yes. Yes, Kahuna Harry. Yes.
Yeah, I love Harry. He's so great.
Yes. I've had classes with him too, and we did he did touch a little bit about tones, and he
Mhm.
talked, because we did the hot breath, and the way that we did it, there is a certain tone that you have to end with it, which is totally different from what we did in the shaman.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you touched base on gongs and bowls and tuning forks. How do you know which noisemaker to make? Or to
It,
use, I
well,
should say.
well, I have the luxury of having like a whole bunch of stuff in my office. So like when people just have one set, you use what you have, and you instruct the tuning fork or the bowl what its job is, or you just you're holding space. But like for me, after I open up, I just look around the office and whatever I need to use kind of sparkles. It just kind of shines to me, and then I know I got to go use that. And sometimes I remember there was one time there was a client who came when I was at more often at Gato Salid, and they I was all excited. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then when I tuned in, it was like no, just the most subtle possible energy, like Reiki on like level one, and it was just subtle, subtle, subtle. And like I'm like, this person's probably never going to come back. I'm getting in my head about like I could do all this stuff, but all I'm doing is putting my hands on this person. And then after the session, she's like, you're the first person I think I'm ever going to come back to, because most people I sit down and they try to blow me out of the water, and I'm so sensitive to energy, I can't handle that. And you gave me exactly what I was able to receive, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's how validating that if you
Yeah.
really are following that spirit's going to guide you to do and be exactly what's needed for the client, and that comes from the heart. It's when we
Hmm.
start trying to figure it out of here that it misfires.
Now, do you have clients who come in maybe even on their first time and they're drawn to a certain instrument that, they want you to use, or they're just like, "I wanna hear it."
Yeah, there's some people who like they have something specific in mind, and I will if someone comes in for a specific session, like they want solfeggio tuning forks or only bowls or something, I of course would honor that. But most clients are okay with, well, do what I wanted, but then free reign to do whatever spirit tells you to do. But there are some people like that, especially if they've had a lot of good experiences with one particular, or sometimes it just calls them. Just like it sparkles to me, it might sparkle to them. And I've done
Mhm.
healings like that before where you have the big mesa setup, and before the healing, you just tell the person, pick whatever, two or three things on the mesa, what shines to you, and what they pick, because each stone has a medicine and every item on there has a meaning and a purpose. Just what they pick already tells you all this information of where you could go with the healing.
Now, do you find that certain groups of instruments, be it bowls, drums, gong, like, are certain ones better at treating certain types of either emotional trauma or physical ailments? Like, let's say right now
Yeah.
everybody's anxious, right? Are there certain ones that are better at treating, or certain frequencies that are better at treating, like, say, anxiety, for example?
Yeah, and Dr. John Boyu's book, Human Tuning, has a whole bunch of different combinations with his tuning forks at four different things like anxiety and dream recall. But yes, like anything crystal ball wise, almost anything, they're so grounding. and they're like comforting. It's kind of like just getting hugged. And a gong has that comforting, but there's also, I kind of equate the gong more like a puma or a snake with that, the ability to pounce on something, where bowls are just kind of like this embracing energy. A gong has the ability to kind of take an energy and pop it and like move it a little bit more with gusto, if you will. And then tuning forks, there's so many different kinds. There's ones that would be better for anxiety. There's ones that, like Fibonacci, because of the microfrequencies, is really good for getting a person to be in touch with their divine spark. So it's great for addictions because it gives them kind of like a lifeline to pull themselves out. Where like solfeggio is like a whole being healing. Solar harmonic is a little bit better for physical type things. There's organ forks that are definitely better for physical things. So depending what's going on with the client, you definitely could cater to what's happening.
I know we have some of the sets in the store, like the chakra
Yeah.
sets and things like that. But I wasn't sure if there's kind of like a general, like generic, like, oh, if it's this, then this. But I think you touched base on that. Started, like, what's a good beginner? Somebody's just wanting to get in. Where do they start?
Like as a healer,
Well,
like
no,
like some
just starting to use some of the, like the singing bowl or the crystal bowl.
tuning forks I'll speak to first because they are the most accessible from a cost standpoint. If you had to pick one fork, I'd pick like an ohm. This is a weighted ohm. I don't know if you will be able to hear it on the camera. Does it come through at all?
Mhm. Wow.
Little bit.
Let me put it on the desk. It might be a little louder.
Yes.
Yeah, that's on my computer actually. So with this, let me grab this book. One, it's grounding because it's ohm, so you could activate it and just put it by your ear and just get centered. You could use it all the way up and down the body. But if you combine it with stuff like this, potent pressure points, there was like one time at the old store location, I think it was at the old store, we had like a Veterans Day event where we had like we were doing healings for veterans all day. And one of the people who was another healer, they had something going on, and we looked up the things for headaches, and just using the fork and going through, the headache was alleviated just with that. Allegedly, we're not medical doctors, but you can look up anything in this book. There's things for sciatica, like when Anya had my wife when we had the. Now I forget if it was Max or Oliver. They all kind of blend together, but she had terrible sciatica in her leg, and we did just one fork going down for the pressure points, and we she never had to have that again. So like there is a lot of, if you had to pick one fork, like that's the one. If you had to pick
Mhm.
one with a resource like that, you can really do a lot. And then if you were to get into um, other sets like solar harmonic, you can just get a perfect fifth, which is just a C and a G, which I can show you. Because this is Melissa's favorite part. She's like, now he's making noise.
That's what my
Oh,
mute button is for on my
and,
laptop.
right, right. Oh, here's C. Where's the other one? Okay. So like there, you can buy the perfect fit just by itself, and it's like C and G, and this is what Doctor Doctor John Boyu would use for like the nervous system, just those two. And he says that this is the card. Like all you really need, he would say, is like an ohm fork, perfect fit, maybe a crystal tuner, which is like energetic sage. And I know Melissa sells a ton of them for like students in college. They can't burn sage and stuff like that because they have to they want to clear out the energy without smelling it.
Mhm.
Just like a small little fork like that. He's like, that's your car. You can do anything you need to sound healing wise with just the car. But all the other things are like the options. You might be able to get there more comfortably, maybe a little bit faster, maybe this or that. It's like the air conditioning and the cruise control and all that. But this will get it done. And then everything else kind of just elevates it and maybe quickens the experience a little bit or makes it smoother.
So when a person is starting out and they haven't had the training, those are the two forks that they should look into and start working with. Is there a wrong or right way to work with them without the book?
The big thing is don't kill the forks. I see people like they just hit the fork so hard, and then it's like you see people cringe, and it's like, yeah, that was too hard. Don't kill the forks. And plus, your ears are sensitive, so like just doing like a light knee tap, you don't want to put it too close to the ear, even with that, because you could do damage to the hearing.
Damage. Mhm.
All right, so it's like really light taps and just play with it, but you're not going to do any harm as long as you don't go too close to the ears. And then the other thing would be to ask people if they have any nerve damage. I forgot to ask that question once, and I used a weighted fork on their back, and they had some sort of back surgery, and it shot pain all throughout their body. And I
Ooh.
learned the hard way. Always ask, "Hey, do you have any nerve issues? Do you have any broken bones I should know about?" And I will never make that mistake again, I hope. Um, the other thing you can do is put like a little O-ring on the handle. I remember one time, I think it was at an event at the store. I was doing the little pendulum thing with a tuning fork, and it slipped out of my hands and it clogged somebody on the nose. So like just common sense, like have a little O-ring so you can hang on to it a little bit better and stuff like that. But you're not going to do harm with frequencies like that.
Now I know the crystal bowls, depending on the size of the bowl, like you kind of have to be careful crystal bowl versus the metal bowl because metal bowls at a certain point will start chattering and quit
Yeah,
playing. Crystal bowls will keep going.
yeah.
And I had a lady in the store at the old location and she just kept ramping this thing
Mhm.
up. So I'm climbing the wall. But I started watching like the glass in my jewelry cases start like,
Oh.
Mhm.
and I'm like, hey, that's
Yeah,
not cool. So, I think, the crystal bowls, like be mindful of your glass.
yeah.
Have. Don't play the game of how high can you get that to go.
No, it should be slow and steadier and wins the race. And sometimes with using like the rubber mallets, like the frosted bowls, especially, you can play them on the inside if they're big enough. If you go on the inside, you don't. The frosted it kind of creates this drag, especially if they're using like a suede mallet, and it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. It would be like as you're going around it. The rubber doesn't do that, especially you get it started inside and then you can move to the outside and it just a little bit goes a long way. Sometimes in a sound bath, I'll walk by a bowl, I'll do one swipe on the inside and it's good for a minute or more. And I moved on to do something else. But some people just like they over deliver. They just and you can break a bowl if it vibrates too much. Like if you really if you got it shaking so much that it moved off its O-ring and then hit the floor while it's vibrating, you could shatter a bowl. Or I've had some people like to be cute and they'll put little crystals in the bowl and they'll like they want to charge up the crystals at the frequency. You could do that in a crystal bowl, but you got to use like a pillow or something. Otherwise, as you get the bowl ramped up, they start bouncing. And guess what that bouncing crystal can do? It can shatter a bowl. I've known people who to lose bowls before because of that. So like all things especially with bowls now, when I got into it, they were expensive, but not like today. Like they've really gone up exponentially since I got into it, and
Mm.
it's a big investment. So take care of your investment, and if you're going to put something in there, make sure there is a big blanket or something. If you're going to charge crystals and things like that, make sure it's on a solid O-ring that's not too small where it's going to rock off. And that's the other thing. Like with the small bowl, can you see it? Like with these ones, they're so small that if you're going too much on the outside, you literally just knock the bowl over. There's no weight to them. So
Mhm.
those ones you almost can only cling instead of trying to go around because there's just not enough weight to the crystal to allow you to put enough pressure on it to sustain a tone going around the outside.
You've talked about this before, like even at the old store when you were getting into it, of like not having like jewelry on necessarily while
Yeah.
playing. Because if you're wet,
Usually I would take my rings off. Yeah. Like, yeah, you want to take your rings off. You want to make sure you have a solid grip. You don't want your hand to be wet. You don't want to put lotion on and then grab a hand bowl and then all of a sudden it slips out of your hand.
Mhm.
If you're transporting them, you really want some really good bubble wrap, or they sell like this big foam stuff. The only bowl I've ever lost is when I moved from my office in Lakewood to the one next to Goddess Elite, and I nested bowls and bowls and bowls. So I had probably had 5 or 6 bowls in a case, and the one on the top killed the second bowl down because it was a really thick theta bowl, and it must have bounced around just enough and it broke the bowl underneath it. And it's just like you really got to be careful.
Mhm.
Nesting bowls is great, but they can't have any wiggle room to move around because if they start jumping, there's probably gonna break another bowl or break themselves.
Mhm.
Now we went over like how people get started. Now let's get into the fun sets. You've you've had planetary sets, the solar harmonic. You kind of went over ohm a little bit, and then the crystal tuner with the angel fork.
Mhm.
And, the planetary, like how many planetary forks are in that set?
In the planet set, I believe there's 12, and I had a custom set made. They're like mini, like ultrasonic planetary frequencies. And even the chakra set that Melissa carries in Goddess Elite, that technically is a planet set because all the chakras of that set are based on planet frequency. So like the third eye is Venus, and this solar plexus is the frequency of the sun. The sacral is the moon, and then you have like the heart, soul purpose, and soul star are all variations of Om. The crown is the Earth Day frequency. So like the throat is Mercury. So like the chakra set that Melissa has is even planet based. So think about that. In addition to working on chakras, if you know Mercury is good for communication, and you know like different combinations, you could even do a little bit of astrology healing. And I know that's one of Melissa's favorites, astrology. I
Yeah.
know.
So what fork is good for when Mercury goes into the microwave?
Microwave. No forks are safe to go in the microwave.
Like, I think what didn't it just come out of retrograde, and I'm sure it'll fall back in here in about 3 months, because so many people are so into the whole Mercury retrograde thing. So, what fork is good? Is it the Mercury fork, or is it more of like an earth fork for grounding so you're not spinning yourself out over Mercury being
No,
retrograde?
well, based on my experience with one of the former store readers who was late, always late, and she was born during a Mercury retrograde, and I believe she was only on time when Mercury wasn't retrograde, and
Yep.
so I used the weighted Mercury fork on her, and all of a sudden she was like on time for like the next week. She was on time to everything. She's like, what? But was it the fork, or was it the intention to do something different and having a material, a physical representation of the intention? Maybe a
Mm,
little bit of both. Maybe a little bit of both. And with astrology, I believe it's kind of like we're Pinocchio, and the planets are like just energy poles, and you don't have to move with the energy. And the more conscious you are, the less astrology matters. So it could be a little bit of that, but Om always helps. Mercury, you have to play with it and see. And just because that worked with that reader doesn't mean that I could go give it to my wife and all of a sudden she's going to be on time. I have actually tried that. It did not work. So, a frequency might work with me and not someone else, but they are a different combination of of energies, and what works for one person might not work for another. And that's why it's really important to stay open. And though protocols, techniques, and things, when you're learning like a bicycle, it's really important to do everything like maybe a regimented way. But at some point, it becomes automatic, and at that point, it's like you can just kind of flow with it, and you're not necessarily doing things how you learned in class. And you might do something completely different. You might do the whole thing backwards for somebody because their world's upside down right now, and they literally need a healing done backwards.
Mhm.
Or, just to give some examples.
Now, why would somebody use the angel fork set?
The angel forks, like these guys, and these are really high pitched, so I'm not going to activate them. The angel forks, which Melissa does have in store, it's 3 forks, and it's 4096, which is a C, and it is like the same C as Dr. John Boyu's work when he has the solar harmonic set. It's just that same C octaved all the way up, and it's like energetic sage. And then you have the D and the E, and they call that Jacob's ladder. When you activate those three, it's kind of like this real high pitched micro harmonics that I would say open up a doorway for you to connect with your guides, your angels, your teachers. If you so choose to go through that door or allow them to come through that. So it creates the space for you to better connect, for inspiration, for guidance, to connect to your spirits and things. And then there's another set, which is a whole nother ball of wax. It's an archangel set, which is a numerology set based on the archangel names that roll with Kabbalah. And that set is like you have Archangel Michael and Archangel Gabriel, Raphael. You have the combined frequencies. I have always loved that set too, to connect with those energies. Not to mention balancing your like Sephiroth of the Kabbalah so you can ascend more easily. Who doesn't love to do that too?
Open up a whole other side topic there.
I know. Well, we could do another one of these sometime and go down the Archangel fun road.
Have you found that certain types of personalities or vibrate, each person has their own type of like frequency of their own, be it their personality or just their chemical makeup. Do you find that there are certain types that enjoy more of the deeper tones versus high pitched nails on chalkboard?
I don't know if I've noticed a correlation like between personality types. I can say that I've seen a trend recently with clients really astraling out of their body when like the smaller forks are used, like the ultrasonic planetary set or the master set that I have, or like these angel frequencies, like those higher pitched ones. Like they say, I remember you hitting those high pitched things and then I was gone. So I've been seeing a trend where there's a lot of people having a similar experience around those higher pitched forks.
Mm,
Personality wise, I haven't noticed anything based on someone's personality, just trends overall.
mm. Now here's just a random question popping up. Um, Synesthesia, people that taste colors or, smell colors. He's like,
With the help
I've
of
been
them.
told I smell like the color purple. So I'm like, what does purple
I've
smell?
never,
So then
I
I'm
don't
like,
know.
okay, sound and color, because we talked about earlier that color kind of falls into vibrational healing because colors are
Mhm.
vibration. So I'm like, oh, is there, something to be said? Or has somebody said, like, hey, that tone you just played smells like.
Well, I have had people during a session like get a lot of specific colors and different things from the session, but I have so many things going on. It would be hard to tell if it was one bowl specifically or if it was an internal shift. And when it comes to like what people perceive as colors, what I perceive as purple might be different than what both of you perceive as purple. And so
Mhm,
like there would also be something to say about, just because what that happens a lot with empaths too. Like they will perceive and be aware of an energy within someone. And for them, they associate it with a certain energy. Now they've labeled it, now they've owned it, where they could have just said, oh, that's an interesting energy over there. But that once they make the association, like what's anger, what I might be, oh, Melissa's really angry. But like for her, it's just potency and determination. And she's not angry at all. But I labeled it as anger. And now I'm getting my anger all crazy. So like I think it's important to let them someone's experience be their experience and not try to relate to like what okay well they said this, so what does that mean, and like now we're trying to relate away the uniqueness that they've just experienced.
see. Well, I think we
Mm.
went over the major talking points that like Hank Hewitt sent over. It's like, here's some important things. Please join us next week for the next Healer's Corner, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can join us live, ask questions, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
I
Bye.